So today I'm going to be telling the story of when I traveled Australia alone for a week. I'm not going to give you every single detail of the trip, but I'm more so just going to highlight the good parts, the challenging parts, the scary parts. There was a very scary night. And I will tell you that at the very end, so stay tuned for that. This story, a lot of people ask how I know God is real, and this trip is just one of those things where it's I know God is real because I saw him show up during this trip. So I'm just going to kind of tell you the story about that, and yeah, stay tuned. Cool. Why it's bawling my eyes out. Where am I? What have I done? For those of you that don't know me or don't know why I was in Australia, I was gone for 7 months to participate in a discipleship training school in Brisbane, Australia. At this point in my life, I had just finished the school and I had just come back from Malaysia, and I still had a month in Australia ahead of me. Doing a week with my friends in Cairns, and then a week alone, and then a week with my mom and sister. What happened was I had planned for my mom and my sister to come 2 weeks after I graduated, but all my friends were only staying for 1 week after we graduated. So I had this week where no one could hang, so I was I guess I'll just travel alone until my mom and sister get there. So honestly, it wasn't my choice. I did not choose willingly to just go travel Australia alone. Probably never would have. I'm not that ambitious. I spent 4 days in Sydney and then 3 in Melbourne. I say Melbourne because that's how they say it in Australia, so that's how I'm used to hearing it, but I know it's spelled Melbourne, but I'm just gonna say Melbourne because I feel weird saying Melbourne now. I was nervous. I was really nervous because this was gonna be the first time in literally 6 months that I had ever been alone, because I had been in community living the whole time. So I remember landing in Sydney and I got an Uber to my hostel, and I just remember stepping out of that Uber being all right, God, it's just me and you, please, you're gonna have to show up. You're gonna have to provide, because I had no plans, no friends, literally no idea where I was, honestly. And so I get out of the Uber, and it took me 15 minutes just to find my hostel. So if you're gonna travel alone, do hostels, because 1, they're cheap, and 2, a lot of people within hostels are also traveling alone, and it's a good way to meet people. One of the biggest things I think I learned traveling alone is that everybody wants to talk. I struggled a lot with fear of man. I was super afraid of other people. And so that was a huge worry of mine going into this trip, was hey, I'm going alone. Literally this whole trip is gonna be me having to initiate conversation, ask for help, engage with strangers, And so I knew that I was gonna have to grow in that way. And so when I got to the hostel that first night in Sydney, I was all right, just break the ice right away. You see each other, you're both in the room, nobody says a word, then it kind of is okay, maybe she doesn't like me or she's not nice, and that's not the case. So what I tried to do is within the first 3 seconds, just break the ice. So that's what I did the first night in Sydney when I got to the hostel, and it was so great because I met the girl across from me in the bunk, and then 2 other girls. A couple were from Germany, Netherlands, and then France, and then all of a sudden 2 girls were hey, when's your flight out? And I was oh, Tuesday morning. And they were oh, well, we actually have a voucher for a ride to the airport. And I was oh, wait, what time's your flight? And they're really early. I was me too. Yeah, I would absolutely love that, because again, Ubering to the airport and all that, I think it was gonna be $60. So that was actually something I was praying about. I was God, if there's any other way that I could get to the airport, would you just provide? These girls just randomly are hey, we have this free voucher, come with us. That was awesome. By this time, it's it's later at night, so I'm not gonna go out or do anything. I'm just let's just settle in. I had no idea what I was gonna do the next day, and I was just kind of well, it's Saturday, tomorrow's Sunday. Hillsong Church is in Australia. If you guys don't know what that is, it's a huge, massive church that also is really known for their music. You might have heard one of their songs called Oceans. But yeah, that's that church, and they're based out of Sydney. If anything, I'll just go to that tomorrow morning. Literally, otherwise, no idea what I'm going to do. Turns out they have 3 campuses in Australia, so I was well, I guess I'll just go to this one that's closest to me. It also happened to be the college campus of Hillsong. So I'm cool, I'll go to that at 10 a.m. I'll Uber there, and God, I don't know what I'm going to do after that. About to go to bed, and on Instagram, and I see that one of my friends from my school in Brisbane is in Sydney with her family. And I was what? And I messaged her. I was hey, dude, are you in Sydney? What are you doing? She's oh, hey, yeah, I'm in Sydney, I'm going to Hillsong tomorrow, you should come. And I was like, sick, which campus are you going to? There's 3. And she's like, oh really? We're just going to this one. Turns out it's the same one, the same time that I'm going. So there you go. The next morning I show up to church and I have a friend and her family to sit with. Like, what? I was totally planning on going alone. So that was pretty cool. Afterwards I'm like, well, I literally have no idea what I'm doing. And then her family offered to drive me to the harbor to drop me off, and I was like, yeah, of course. I don't necessarily want to spend $20 on an Uber. So that was super, like, that was just a blessing to have them be able to take me to the harbor. Get to the harbor, get to the opera house, and I see it, and I'm like, cool. Well, in about 20 minutes, the harbor, like, I'd seen it all, and I was like, I really wish I had someone to experience this with. And at that moment, I was like, wow, it truly is about the people and the relationships, not about the places that you can go. So I asked this group of girls to take a picture of me at the harbor. You know, it's always awkward, just like me posing, but you know, you just have to get over it. And I actually ended up talking to them for a while, did some other stuff, walked around some markets, but then night's coming. I was like, all right, God, like, what do? Do I just like go back to the hostel? What? And he's like, I remember them at church mentioning that there was a college night. And so they were going to have like just a worship night with all the college students, and like anyone was welcome. And I was like, no, I'm not going. First of all, I'm gonna look like freaking Dora the Explorer because I had my backpack on with my backpack and my laptop because I didn't want to leave it in the hostel. I'm gonna feel like a loser, like walking in alone, like no one to talk to, no one to sit with, like that'll just be so awkward. And he was just like, go. And I was like, I'm going, God, literally nothing better to do. Yeah, I did feel awkward. I felt weird walking in alone with my backpack, no one to talk to. I didn't know anyone. And it's a bunch of people my age, which is even more intimidating, you know? Feeling awkward, and I look over at the light booth, and there's a girl from my church in Omaha standing there. And I'm like, what? So I go up to her, I'm like, hey. And she's like, all right. And then so we got to catch up and talk, and so now I know a girl in the light booth, and I'm like, okay, I'm not really alone anymore. And then another girl approaches me, and she's like, hey, like, are you alone? Do you need like somewhere to sit? I was like, yeah, actually I am, and like I would love that. And so she actually introduces me to all of her friends and brings me into the auditorium, and I sit with them. And so now not only do I know someone in the light booth, but now I have this new group of girls that I'm talking to, and I'm not alone, and I don't feel awkward. I'm like, okay, this is actually good. This is cool. So we're sitting down, service is about to start. I'm like, cool. God is so good. He provides so much. Not done yet. All of a sudden, 2 guys walk in and they sit right in front of me, and I'm like, they look familiar. Well, turns out they are 2 guys from my campus in Brisbane, Australia, which, mind you, is a flight away, and they're there on a Sunday night. They're still in school, so they have class the next morning, and I tap them, and I'm like, hey, like, what are you doing here? And they're like, oh my God, hey. And I was like, no, seriously, like, what are you doing here? This is crazy. And they're like, oh, like, we just wanted to go to Sydney for the weekend, and we wanted to check out Hillsong, so we're just here, we fly back tomorrow morning. I'm like, what? Like, literally, what are the odds that they, of all places they could have sat in the auditorium, they just come and sit right in front of me? Like, and I was like I was on the far side of the auditorium. Entrance is like all the way over here. They come in and sit literally right in front of me. And I was like, what the heck, God, you're so cool. So now I have so many people that I'm just like acquainted with, and I don't feel alone. And we get to worship and do all that stuff, and it was awesome. And then afterwards I'm like, cool, I'll just go home. And God is like, nope, like, not done yet. So then this girl actually is like, hey, like, a bunch of us from Hillsong are going out to Macca's, McDonald's. If you don't know, that's what they call McDonald's in Australia, is Macca's. She's like, we're going to Macca's if you want to come. And so I was like, sure, cool. So then me, the 2 guys from Brisbane, and then all these Hillsong people just go to Macca's, and we chill for like the rest of the night, hang out, talk. It was really cool because one of the guys from Brisbane was actually about to leave for outreach to Malaysia, which I had just got back from. So I got to talk to him, like give him some tips, and it was just literally so nice to see so many familiar faces. And I was just like in shock, like God came through in every moment of that day. And yeah, I did have some moments alone, but like that's part of being alone and traveling alone, you know? You're gonna be alone sometimes. Then the next day, again, no idea what I'm doing. I'm just in the hostel, and one of the girls actually had been living there for like 3 months or something. Oh, do you want to go to Bondi with me? And I was like, sure. We honestly just hung out, walked around the beach, went on this little path, and it was super nice because I just got to hang out with her, talk to her. She's from Germany, and we got sushi that night, and then I came home, and my flight was super early the next morning. And then the next morning I get on my flight, feeling good, like I have a front row to myself, nobody on the side of me, window seat, like all is well. And then this is where my first mistake happened. So, and the pilot comes on and he's like, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we will be landing here shortly in about 15 minutes to Melbourne. Thank you for flying with us, whatever. I hope you appreciate my Aussie accent. And I was like, sweet, 15 minutes. And I look out the window and I'm like, wait, like 15 minutes, like, the city's right there. What? We're literally flying over the city and I'm like, what have I done? So we're flying, like getting further and further away from the city. I'm just watching. And at this point, it literally looks like Nebraska, like just cornfields, middle of nowhere. And I'm like, what? Where am I? Turns out there's 2 airports to Melbourne, and me trying to travel cheap, I just booked the cheapest ticket, like not knowing that there was 2 airports. And I think I paid like $30 for this ticket, so it wasn't bad. But then I was like, all right, cool. Like I landed at the wrong airport and the city's like way back there. So I'm not one to panic about that kind of stuff. Pretty easygoing, pretty chill. Like, I don't know, I didn't let this ruin the rest of my day. I was kind of like, okay, this is the situation I'm in. I can't go back. Like, it's already done. So how do I move forward? So I wasn't panicking. I wasn't worried. I'm like, hey, I'm not going to be stuck in this airport for life. Like, I'm gonna get out of this. It's just honestly a matter of how much I'm gonna pay. Every problem can be fixed. It's just a matter of how much you're gonna have to pay to get out of it. So I'm looking at Ubers. Uber was gonna be like $200. So I'm like, okay, like if I have to pay $200, I have to pay $200. You know, that's life. Well, let's just like see where I'm at. Let's scope out the area. Literally, this airport is like, it is literally one tiny little waiting room, like barely even a terminal. And I'm like, oh my God. So I'm like, okay, not much to work with. So I see all these people like going towards this red box. I'm like, well, what's this red box? And I look and it literally is like ticket to city. And I'm like, yes, thank you, God. Thank you. It's like $20. So I buy it right then and there and I walk, and turns out I get on like one of the last buses leaving for a while for the next hour. And I'm like, sick. So I literally walk right on this bus, get on, and I'm on the bus to the city. And I'm like, God always provides. Okay, I get off here. So I get off. I don't even know what stop, and I type in my hostel address and it's like 3 miles away. Shoot, I guess I'll walk. Get to my hostel like midday at this point. Again, I don't know where I am, and I ended up talking to the guy at the front of the hostel, and we talked for like 30 minutes, and it was super nice because again, like just learning like, hey, everybody wants to talk. And so I just strike up a conversation with him. He was from England. He was telling me about like why he's in Australia. Just breaking those comfort zones of like initiating conversation with strangers. Kind of had to get over that real quick. And also to ask for help. That is a huge thing that I really didn't like doing before this whole thing. I didn't like asking for help, but at this point, like I had to like, hey, like where am I? You know, like you have to ask for help and you have to be willing to. Yeah, that first day in Melbourne, I just talked to him, asked some help. To get into the hostel and all that stuff. He gave me some tips, so I went and walked around Melbourne. That first day, I just walked as far as I could on foot through the city and back. So I'd pretty much, by the end of that day, seen everything that was around me. That was, like, one of the weirdest things I think about traveling alone. Is, like, I was accountable to no one but myself. It was like, hey, Lindsay, what do you want to eat? I don't know, Lindsay, like, what do you want to eat? I could do anything. I could walk anywhere. Even without having to consider another person's opinion on like where to eat, it still took me like 20 minutes just to decide where I wanted to like get my coffee every morning or whatever, because there were so many options, and that's why I loved it. Eating alone was definitely a challenge. I was just so aware that I was alone. You know, like sitting there with my pizza, people are walking by, I'm like, oh my gosh, everybody's noticing me. They think like I'm weird and I'm alone and I have no friends. You know, I learned that eating alone is a skill. I didn't have it, but by the end of that trip I did, and I just had to get over like, hey, those people might think whatever about me. I don't care. I'm enjoying myself. I'm enjoying this pizza. And yeah, you just really just take in the moment. God, I have no idea what I'm doing tomorrow. If you could please provide. And again, I wasn't really expecting much. I was like, he already provided so much in Sydney. He's probably done providing for me. No. So I wake up the next morning, literally no idea what I'm going to do. And I see a message on my phone from a girl in my school from Brisbane. And she's like, hey, we're in Melbourne. If you want to hang out, we're going to the beach huts. And I was like, wait, what? By this time, about 2 weeks out of my school, I think everybody's long gone and home. And I was like, totally just like closed the book on any options of like ever seeing those people again. Here we are. This girl from my school is messaging me like, hey, I'm here with a couple other girls from the school. If you want to hang today, come. And I was like, God, you're so good. Cool. So now I have plans for the rest of the day. And that day was honestly so fun. Just met them on the train and we trained to a coffee shop, got some coffee, and then we went to this, like I said, these beach huts, and it was just like literally 80 plus beach huts in a row, all painted differently, and then the sun was setting and you could see like the city skyline in the distance. And then we hung out that night. We went back to their hostel, and this is kind of funny. There was just these guys playing Call of Duty Zombies, throwback to 8th grade for me, and I just saw that and again initiate conversation. So I was like, hey, like, can I play? And they let me play, and we ended up talking. One of them was from Netherlands, Germany, France, again, like all over. We all just bonded over knowing how to play zombies, and we played zombies for a little bit, and I met some new people, reconnected with some old friends, like, so cool. And the next morning, I was heading back to Brisbane. So, the bus left, got to the airport, and landed back in Brisbane, and I was like, just like, so in awe, because I was so nervous about that trip. I think everybody should travel alone. Like, I really do think that you will learn so much about yourself because you have time to spend with only yourself, and then also you just like learn about a lot about how you interact with people and maybe things you're scared of. And which reminds me, oh my gosh, okay, the scariest night. The scariest night of traveling alone actually did not happen in Sydney or Melbourne, but I was still traveling alone. It happened in Cairns. Guys, okay. So, flying up to Cairns with some friends, but they were on a different flight as me. But their flight got delayed till like 3 a.m. I Ubered to the Airbnb, and I get there, and it's like, it's night again, and it's like, it's just kind of sketchy. I go up to the door to unlock it, and I look in the window, and I think I see someone, and I'm like, oh my God, like, there's someone in our Airbnb. Like, this is so creepy. It's dark out. Just go in, like, freaked out, and then, like, no one's in the apartment. I was just, like, paranoid, so I was like, okay, like, it's fine. I had just left all my friends, so I'm sitting there, and I'm just, like, bawling my eyes out. Like, I don't think I've cried that hard, like, in my whole life. And I was just sitting there, and I, like, couldn't breathe, and I was just, like, in such a bad mood, because I was like, I don't want to be here, but I am here, and I miss my friends, and I'm never going to see them again. I don't want to go home. I'm scared to go home. Where am I? Like, all these thoughts, and so I'm like, okay, Lindsay, like, stop. Like, this is not helping anything. Me just sitting here crying for hours. I need to get up. I need to do something productive. I need to just, like, you know, like, keep moving forward. And so I was like, cool, what can I do? I was like, I'll go buy groceries for the week. I'll walk to a grocery store. Like, that's helpful, right? There's a grocery store. So I decided to go walk to this grocery store. And in Australia, like, they don't have street lights like we do here in America, where it's, like, every, like 3 on every block. It's, like, one, and then, okay, it's gonna be, like, pitch black for a while, and then another one, okay, and then another one. So, like, it's pretty dark when I'm walking, and I'm like, again, I'm not in the nicest part of town, so I'm kind of just, like, on edge, walking, and I'm like, okay, just get to the city where this grocery store is, and I'll be fine. So I'm, like, walking, and I passing this house, and I look over, and it's abandoned, and all the windows are out, and all of a sudden, I look up, still, like, ingrained in my mind, to this day, so scary, there's just a man, and he's standing in the window, doesn't have a shirt, like, really scrawny, no teeth, and he's just, like, kid you not, like, waving, like, super slow, hand open, just, like, smiling and staring. Heck no, like, this did not just happen. And so I'm like, nope. He knows I'm alone. What if he comes down from the house? What if he, like, attacks me? Like, all these things, like, my mind is just going, like, crazy. And I'm like, I need to get out of here. I need to go. And I'm, like, crying now. And so I remember that one of the girls from my school was staying in Cairns. I had no idea where to, like, visit her. So I messaged her. I was like, hey, I know you're in Cairns. Like, I'm actually really freaked out. I'm really scared. I'm really sad. Is there any way I could, like, come hang out with you? And so she's like, yeah, totally. She sends me the location. Turns out her hostel is only, like, a little bit further than the grocery store. So I ended up walking there. Like, that was just, like, a horrifying experience. So I'm, like, going out to dinner with her and her sister. I totally just, like, infringed on their, like, sister reuniting, whatever. But I was just, like, literally, I was so scared. So I was so thankful that she let me, like, barge in on that. But we got dinner, we hung out. It's like 10 p.m. and it's about time for me to, like, go back home. Didn't get any groceries, but whatever. And I was like, okay, like, I think I'm just, like, gonna walk home. And she's like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, like, I feel better now. I've seen a familiar face. Like, I've calmed down. I think I was just, like, really freaked out earlier, and, like, I had a right to be. But, like, I'm fine now. I'll walk. Going into all these, like, traveling alone, I had to be aware of the fact of, like, hey, I'm a girl. I'm alone. There's no way I'm taking anybody down if they try to attack me. Like, just gotta be real with myself. So if anything, like, if I'm getting out of a situation, it's through my smarts. Like, I'm just gonna have to, like, smart my way out of it. And so I was very aware of that, and, you know, I was just very cautious about, like, hey, maybe don't walk down certain alleyways, or don't do this. Probably shouldn't have walked home alone that night, but I did. A mistake. And so I'm walking home, all of a sudden this man comes up to me, and he just goes, "Are you alone?" Why did I walk alone? Why did I walk alone? I knew I shouldn't have walked alone. It was just super, super scary, because he was just like, he had this, like, smile, like, "Are you alone?" Like, he wouldn't stop smiling in everything that he said to me, and he was walking super close to me, and I was like, in my head, I was like, "Do not tell me you're alone. Like, even though you are, you're not alone." And I was like, "No, actually, like, I'm just coming from a friend's house, going to a friend's house. Like, they're expecting me." And he's like, "How long have you been here?" And I was like, "Don't tell him it's your first night. Like, make him think you're familiar with the surroundings and you know where you are." So I was like, "Oh, I've actually been here about a week. Pretty familiar with the area." "Well, where are you going?" I was like, "I'm going to my friend's house." And he was like, "Oh," and then I was like, "Where are you going?" And he's like, "That way." And he just, like, obscurely points in the direction we're walking conveniently, and I was like, okay, like, how do I get out of this situation? Like, I'm not gonna take this man down. I can't physically. So I'm walking towards the apartment, which again is kind of, like, in the darker, sketchier area, and I'm like, well, I'll just, like, start turning and, like, staying within the city. So I start making, like, random turns. At one point, I'm, like, literally have gone in a circle, and this man is still following me. It's obvious, it's apparent, he's following me. Like, he does not plan on going anywhere else besides where I'm going. And I fake a phone call. And, like, mind you, this is super, like, this is a big deal for me to come up with, because I hadn't received a phone call in 7 months because I didn't have self-service in Australia or Malaysia. So the fact that I even thought about, like, getting a phone call, that's from God. Thanks, God. So I fake a phone call. I'm like, "Hey, yeah, wait, actually, you don't have another one? Okay, see you in, like, 5. And I hang up, and I'm like, "Sorry, my friends back at the other hostel locked themselves out, and I have the other key, like, I have to go back." And he was just like, "Oh, okay." And so, like, I turn around, and I, like, walk the opposite direction of him, and he just, like, kind of, like, wanders off to, like, God knows where. I don't know. And I'm just scared out of my mind again, because I've just been followed by this man, and, you know, who knows what's next as I get into, like, the sketchier areas. So I'm just, like, freaked out, and I finally make it back to the apartment, and I just literally go to bed. It was not a good night, and it was a scary night, and it was a sad night, and not every moment of traveling is going to be, like, beaches, blue water, sunshine. Like, no, like, there's going to be nights that are bad. There's going to be nights that are scary, and you do have to be aware. I should have been smart. I should have been more smart. Should have taken an Uber home. For sure, the most challenging parts of traveling alone weren't, like, getting around or anything. Like, I don't know, I found that just ask for help. But it was just, like, getting over the fact that I was alone and, like, coming to terms with that and just being okay with hanging out with myself and God. Meals, again, just sitting alone, eating alone, and then finally, as I mentioned, like, asking for help. And so those were the most challenging parts, I would say, but overall I'm so glad I did it, because I grew so much as a person. Like, I really don't think I would be as willing to like, engage with people as I am now. Really, anyone and everyone I just started talking to, and I really broke that fear of man. God provided through the entire trip. First of all, just protecting me in situations where I wasn't being smart, and providing for me, friends, growth, whatever it was, like Jehovah Jireh. I think that means God provides. If it doesn't, oops. But, you know, like, God provides. He is faithful, and he is so good. That's my story. That's all I got for you, and good day, mate.